Art the Clown is back in his third outing, and it has been 1 year since Terrifier 2. And we get the main characters Sienna and Jonathan from that movie dealing with what happened and trying to move on from the events from Terrifier 2. That took place on Halloween, so I guess it's technically over a year, because this movie takes place on Christmas. And in the opening scene we already get something that is a bit more questionable when it comes to putting kids in the hands of a deranged killer. And especially Art, with how rough he gets with the kills. In this scene, immediately you get to see that this third movie has a bigger budget, and it is used well in this movie. It looks like it used a bigger budget. You can notice it in every frame if you compare it with the other two movies. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of the first two Terrifier movies. I thought the first one was just an okay movie with barely any story, and the emphasis was more on the gore and kills, which to me personally isn't interesting. I want some more story in my slasher flicks, because I don't care what you throw at me when it comes to the gore factor if I don't care about the characters that the story is about. The second movie was a bit better when it comes to story, introducing Sienna and her brother, and when the gory scenes came, it was more fun and interesting because there was more care put into story and characters. So the second movie was fun with some flaws, but not enough to take away from how much fun that movie was. In this third movie, like I mentioned before, we get a bigger budget, and the story and characters I feel are being built upon, and that is great. We get to spend more time with Sienna and her brother, and we actually get a good narrative in this movie. That's not to say that we don't get Art being Art, and this movie has some fantastic practical effects. Some of the best looking practical effects I've seen in a bloody and gory movie like this. The movie looks great with its cinematography, the lighting adds to the atmosphere of the movie, and the camera work is smooth with nice camera movement. It was impressive to see, especially with how low budget the first movie was, and you could notice it a lot in how the acting and effects were executed. Damian Leone shows he could potentially direct one of the bigger horror franchises out there, like Friday the 13th, or something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think he would be a good fit for that kind of movie where a lot of gore is an essential part of the story. With his Terrifier trilogy, he shows he can direct a movie very well, and I would want to see what he can do with a bigger budget given to him than what he has got with the Terrifier trilogy. The Terrifier trilogy is basically an independently made horror trilogy, and it is an original story, and the character of Art the Clown is an original character, so all the props go to Damian Leone and his creativity. Now I will go over the story in Terrifier 3, so if you have not seen Terrifier 3 yet, go see it and then come back to this video and let me know what you think about Terrifier 3.
Dennis! Porta il tuo culo qui! Adesso! Sei reale.
In the present, Art the Clown invades and brutally murders a family during Christmas. 5 years prior, after being decapitated by Sienna Shaw, Art's headless body makes its way to the asylum where survivor Victoria Hayes, now possessed by the little pale girl, has just given birth to his head. They kill a nurse and a guard before fleeing to an abandoned house. Victoria smashes her face into a bathroom mirror and uses a glass shard to enter hibernation in a bathtub, and Art sits in a rocking chair in the attic. The two become dormant. Sienna is released from a hospital to stay with her aunt Jess, who lives with her husband Greg and their daughter Gabby, who idolizes Sienna but has no knowledge of the events. Sienna is suffering from survivor guilt and frequently has hallucinations of her deceased best friend Brooke, whose death she feels responsible for. She struggles to reconnect with her younger brother Jonathan, who is now in college trying to move on with his life. Art and Victoria are woken from their slumber when two workers stumble upon their bodies in the house. The duo kills the workers, and Victoria begins working on a costume, while Art ventures off on another killing spree. Art meets a Santa Claus impersonator at a bar and murders him and other patrons. Art then impersonates a Santa at a local shopping mall and uses explosives disguised as gifts to slaughter several shoppers, including children. Sienna sees Art at the mall before the explosion, but does not tell her family since they would not believe her. Sienna visits Jonathan at his university, where she meets Jonathan's roommate Cole and his girlfriend Mia, who hosts a true crime podcast. Mia pressures Sienna and Jonathan to participate in an interview about the Miles County massacre, but Sienna lashes out. Sienna confesses to Jonathan that she thinks Art is still alive, showing him letters he wrote to her while she was in the psychiatric hospital, stating demons can be reborn through a host, like Victoria. She also tells Jonathan she plans to return to the Terrifier haunted attraction to retrieve her father's sword. Art arrives at the university and kills Cole and Mia with a chainsaw while they are having sex in the showers. Sienna learns about the mall killings on the news and panics. Greg leaves to collect Jonathan while Sienna falls asleep. She dreams about the angels crafting her angel warrior costume. She wakes to find Art and Victoria, now dressed in a clown costume, have invaded her home, and Art incapacitates her with a mallet. As Sienna regains consciousness, she sees Greg's body pinned to the wall, and Jess tied up across from her. Victoria shows them a skinned head consumed by rats, telling her it's Gabby's, and then Art kills Jess by hammering a tube down her throat, forcing the rats in her throat with a blowtorch. Art suddenly enters with Gabby as a hostage, and Victoria reveals to Sienna that the head is Jonathan's. Victoria places a crown of thorns on Sienna's head and tries to possess her, but she resists and manages to open a gift, stabbing Victoria with its contents, her father's sword. Sienna decapitates Victoria, who disintegrates. Art attacks Sienna with his chainsaw, but she gains the upper hand. Victoria's blood burns through the floor and creates a portal to hell. Gabby falls and holds on to the edge, and Sienna leaves Art behind to save her. Sienna fails to save her, and Gabby falls into the abyss with the sword. Art flees through a window and boards a bus, while Sienna vows to find and rescue Gabby. So that was the story of Terrifier 3. And like I said earlier in the video, it is a very well directed movie. It looks great visually and the acting is better this time around, especially better than in Terrifier 1. The movie has much more story than the original 2. The story building and story elements became better in Terrifier 2 already, and in this movie it has become even better. As long as the movie focuses on the characters, it is very interesting. We get to see some good scenes with Sienna and Jonathan, and that part is interesting. But I have to say that when we cut back to Art and the kill scenes, the movie loses some momentum, and I know that the point of these movies is mostly the gore and kill scenes. But I feel that in this movie it kind of took away from the development of the other characters. It is still fun to see Art killing people left and right, in the most gruesome ways, but it was kind of a bit tamer this time around, even though the practical effects look great. I feel as though the things happening around Art the Clown isn't as interesting as what is happening around the other characters. Also, I feel that some of the characters were badly written, especially the girl that is kind of impressed by Art the Clown and wants to feel how it is to meet him. Also, she is very obsessed with Sienna and Jonathan, only because of the fact that they were survivors of Art the Clown in the previous movie. She kind of feels overwritten in some instances, where she is over the top, and that has mainly to do with the dialogue that is written for her, and to some extent the performance of the actress. There are also some pacing issues in the movie where I felt that it didn't need to be as long as it is. You could have easily cut some scenes with Arthur to make this movie a much tighter experience. David Howard Thornton is as usually great in the role of Art the Clown. He really has done a great performance in all three of these movies, and he is once again great here. He is still very scary and very wild. He's still one of the more violent slasher killers I have ever seen in any slasher movie. There is in particular one kill here involving several people, but especially one guy that gets cut in half by chainsaw wielding Art. He gets a chainsaw up the ass and the kill is very wild and gory. And the kills here are very brutal, but compared to the two previous movies, it is a bit tame. You only get what you basically expect Art the Clown to do by now. And that maybe has to do with that I have got desensitized to gore and especially with Art, because we have seen worse in the previous two movies. Depending on how many entries Damian Leone plans to make in this franchise, I would want some more answers to some of the questions that are still lingering. Don't get me wrong, we got some answers in Terrifier 3, but now I think it's time to give us all the answer as to what is going on in the bigger scale, the bigger picture. Art the Clown seems to be a demon or something similar, and Sienna seems to be the one that has the powers to defeat him, and his friends like the Pale Girl, or Emily Crane, that is her real name. All in all, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. Better than the first movie and on par or a bit better than the second movie. I feel that moving forward that Damian Leone should try to tie it up with one or two more movies, and then we can see what he can do with the more established franchises, hopefully. If you liked this video, please like, share and subscribe. Also push the bell icon so that you don't miss my uploads and future videos. This has been Boogeyman Cinema. Thank you for watching.